if everyone in the green group gives yourself a large round of applause, and the reason for it is, I only have 17 slides. I heard they have 55 slides. So you definitely picked the right presentation to come to because I like to have a lot of fun. Now, how many of you are retailers that are coming to this session because you have a returns problem and you read, this is about the returns revolution? All right. Well, I have to admit, since we are in the trust room, I'm probably the customer that you don't want. And I'll tell you why. So a couple weeks ago, I found myself not able to sleep and scrolling on Instagram. Who does that? Anyone scrolling? All right, all of us. And of course, I made 6 different purchases. I've done this long enough to know that you're not laughing at me, you're laughing with me because you've done this as well. And so the next morning, my wife wakes up and she sees all these purchases on Amex and she's like, did our card get hacked or what? You couldn't sleep? And so I admitted I couldn't sleep. So the next day I had buyer's remorse and I tried to log in and start to the returns process. Because I'm like, okay, I don't really need all this stuff. And not one single brand could I cancel my order. Which is okay. So as you know, the packages, I started competing with my wife because Amazon shows up to our house every day. But I started to make some returns. And so I was gonna return 4. 4 out of the 6 brands I made a return with. 3 experiences went phenomenally well. I could log online, I could seamlessly do a return, but I still have 1 return that's sitting in the back of my truck. How many of you have ever had that experience where you had the best of intentions to return something? So let me tell you how this returns process went. I went online to try and process my return, and I had to download a form. Keep in mind, this item was $47. So I had to download a form, fill out the form, email it back to the brand, wait for their customer service team to process it, the RMA, before I got a return label. And I'm thinking to myself, there must be a different way. So I called into the customer service center. I said, hey, I get it. Can you just help me fill out the form? No, sir. You're gonna have to fill out the form. Really? You can't process this for me? Nope. So I'm probably the worst customer because as a logistics leader or an inventory management leader, you're waiting on my return to come back and it's sitting in the back of my truck because I'm still waiting for the RMA to get processed after I sent this form in. And I feel like they're just waiting me out the 30-day return policy so they don't have to. Everyone's shaking their head, yes, you've experienced before. So I feel like I'm in the fight of my life when I get home from this conference to really try and get this taken care of. But what's really interesting is my wife has different buying behavior. So my wife has been shopping for a blouse. She's ordered from 3 different companies, almost 4 different blouses from each company because of course, she's not comfortable with the size, she's not comfortable with the color, and she'll probably end up keeping 1 out of the 12 blouses. Anyone else have a partner like that? You're like that. All right, well, hey, it's the trust piece here. We can admit it, okay? So my wife is one of those shoppers where she's gonna, instead of trying it on in the store, she's gonna try it on at home and then send you everything back, which is now causing a lot of headaches for retailers. And we know this because at parcelLab, on average, every year, we help facilitate 155 million returns globally. So while you are sitting in here, our platform is gonna help facilitate 18,000 returns in the next 45 minutes. So we know a little bit about returns and what customers are expecting right now. So if we really think about, okay, out of the 155 million, what are some of the top customer frustrations? So you'll see kind of the one I was just talking about. It's very complicated. It's not very seamless. I can't go online and just facilitate it. The second one is really around lack of clear communication. So not only could I not find the return process online, the customer service agent, unfortunately, she really couldn't help me either. She was amazing, but she couldn't help me either. Another one is really around poor customer service. Now, part of me could say she didn't deliver me a great experience. I think she delivered me the best experience that she was empowered and equipped to deliver me. But ultimately now, I have this expectation of a brand that I have to go into a fight with them when I get home. to try and get my refund. How many of you think I'm actually gonna buy from this brand again? Probably not. And if you think about where we are with digital commerce, I actually think, and I've seen it, traditional loyalty is dead. I really believe we're in this gray era of what I call the brand exploration, where a lot of retailers are still continuing to get flooded with first-time buyers. How many of you are getting flooded with first-time buyers? We all are, right? And so social media is driving a lot of that. And ultimately, when a buyer first engages with your brand, there's two key drivers that they're looking at. The first key driver is really around delivery experience. How easy, how seamless was my delivery experience? Was it delivered on time? The second thing they look at is the returns process. And if they don't have a good returns process, they're not gonna shop with you again. That's driving your lapsed customer key metric. How many of you are now going around, we gotta decrease the percentage of lapsed customers who shop with us one time and then hasn't returned in the last 12 months, looking at our T12 file. And so ultimately what you're trying to balance as retailers is not just, let me go back here, all the customer frustrations and what their expectations are, but now what you're trying to balance is how do we run a profitable business? So as retailers, you're dealing with a high volume of return rates. You're also dealing with how do we build customer-centric policies that not only help deliver and meet customer expectations, but we also drive a profitable business. What you're also dealing with is returns fraud and abuse. So matter of fact, over the last 6 months of working with over 800 brands and many more, the number one concern that retailers are having is the amount of return fraud and abuse. I see a lot of nodding heads. This is a problem we got to solve. And so ultimately, what we continuously hear as well is when we think about fraud and abuse, it's not happening from a large population of customers. It's happening from a very small population of customers, but we don't have enough data or insights to help prevent that. And so we see the same customers driving the fraud and abuse. The last one, if we really think about kind of what these teams are trying to drive, is how do we make the experience in the post-purchase just as good as what our pre or purchase experience is? And so ultimately, if we think about all of this and how we're trying to design communications, the importance of the returns experience after analyzing 155 million returns last year is when the customer has a really good returns experience, their time to repeat purchase is 4.5 times faster than someone who has a really poor returns experience. And I see a lot of nodding heads because we probably see that in our own buying behavior. Now, what's even more important is on that next sale, their average order value is 36% more than their first purchase. Great numbers, right? So ultimately, if we really think about, okay, how do we meet customer expectations? How do we balance driving a profitable business? Ultimately, leading retailers, if you look at the leading retailers like IKEA, Nike, and many others, what they understand is it's no longer competing for the margins in the pre-purchase and the purchase. For the last 15 years, digital experience leaders have been driving digital experience strategies to squeak out the margins in the pre-purchase and purchase. The ultimate revenue, the customer lifetime value, it lives in the post-purchase experience. That's where your loyalty is either lost or won. And so while many brands are still trying to compete in the margins, the leading brands have pivoted to the post-purchase experience strategy. And so a lot of what's driving this is brands, what we call checkout at checkout. How many of you take a look at either the company that you're working for or companies that you do business with where when you're navigating the online experience, it's really, really good. But then once you give them the exchange for money, that post-purchase experience kind of pisses you off. A lot of people are nodding. And so ultimately it is, okay, what's the future vision? How do we really improve the overall post-purchase experience? And a lot of this is just elevating your level of thinking from post-purchase experience is no longer transactional, right? If you think about the post-purchase experience, when we went through the pandemic, everyone was just going in and getting post-purchase communications because the volume of where's my order calls spiked. And so it's been the strategy's been very transactional. And so ultimately the leading brands have pivoted from transactional to strategic. And so what they're doing is they're closing what we call the 3 main loyalty loops in the post-purchase experience. And those are the delivery experience, the returns experience, and then ultimately the brand experience. So if you think about the roles that you play in your organization, how many of you sit on the logistics, warehouse, inventory management side? How many of you sit in like the digital experience side? Handful. How about customer experience? Rock on. CX leaders are the best, aren't we? So if you think about how many of you, show of hands again, how many of you are on the logistics side? How many of you know that the number one cause of returns is due to inventory management and dynamic versus static delivery dates? Who knows what I mean by that? So how many of you have ever gone online and you're going through the checkout and it says your estimated delivery date is within 3 to 5 days? A lot of us, right? So that's static. That means it's not taking a look at your live inventory, probably because the systems might be very disconnected. And so it's just giving you a very generic delivery date. Now, a dynamic delivery date, that's taken into account all of your back-end logistics. It's taking a look at your carrier data. It's taking a look at your inventory positioning, and it will give you the exact date in which I can expect the delivery at home. And so ultimately what's happening is more than 80% of retailers still utilize a dynamic delivery date, so the generic 3 to 5 days. And guess what happens when, as a brand, you don't fulfill that promise of 3 to 5 days? Frustration, where's my order calls? And so ultimately, that entire delivery experience centers around the inventory positioning. Now, when we think about the returns experience, we all just kind of agreed that returns is a big, big challenge for us and our brands. And so ultimately, how do we create a very seamless returns experience that both meets customer expectations, but also allows us to drive a profitable business? And we're gonna jump into that a little bit more. And then last but not least is around the brand experience. So are there any CMOs or marketers in here? One, okay. So if you think about the role of the CMO or the role of the marketing team, they spend millions of dollars on creating that brand experience. They're talking about, the product story throughout our entire purchase. But how many of you get that email communication about your delivery and you have no clue who it's from? We all have that, right? Especially if you're purchasing from a luxury brand and you want that entire luxury experience and that unboxing experience that you have, and then you get a want email from a third-party carrier. So from a marketing experience, how do we continuously tell our product life story? How do we deliver and meet your expectations throughout the entire delivery process as well? Now, when you successfully close those 3 loops, what you can see at the bottom is one of our brands, the impact of getting it right. So a 10-point improvement in customer satisfaction. They reduce their where's my delivery or where's my refund, so WSMO calls, by over 30%. They increase same-store sales revenue by 5%. And then, of course, they improve their overall customer lifetime value. How many of you would love to deliver a post-purchase experience and close your loyalty loops and show up to your executives with those types of numbers? The CX leader's like, oh my God, I just want to get to the ELT meeting. Help me do that. And so when you really think about the overall role of customer lifetime value, that's really the key metric of the customer experience. So it's no longer about CSAT, it's no longer about NPS. Ultimately, the loyalty metric comes down to customer lifetime value. And it comes down to not the pre and current purchase, but how well does that post-purchase experience tie into the connection that you build with me you're meeting my overall satisfaction. And so talking to over 800 retailers, what we really uncovered were 4 main things that's holding them back from really delivering a great post-purchase experience. So those 4 things are, 1, we're just very disconnected. So from a CX leader, what we hear all the time is, I have no insight into the PPX. So I try and have a delivery experience survey that gets triggered, but because I'm on a very static delivery date, a lot of our customers get the delivery experience survey before they actually get their stuff. Have you? She's laughing because she's like, yep. The second one is really around, we have a one-size-fits-all journey when it comes to how merchandise gets delivered. So it doesn't matter if you're at the highest tier of loyalty and you make 7 to 10 different purchases a year and you're spending over $10,000 a year versus me who just purchased from you for the very first time when I was numbing, not being able to go to sleep and purchasing from your brand for the very first time. That experience looks the exact same. The third thing that we heard is very little personalization. Now, I think personalization is the most overblown buzzword of the last 10 years. Fits right up there with the Net Promoter Score, if you want my honest opinion. But if we think about personalization, how many of you would say it's one of our top initiatives to really build stronger connections with our customers? A lot of us are raising our hands, right? And so ultimately what's getting in the way, if you think about personalization, is we don't really do personalization, we do customer segmentation. Because we don't have enough data, because all of our systems are disconnected. So ultimately we build lookalike models that help us, recommend these 3 products based on the 1 blouse that just got purchased. Now, is it really personalization if 500,000 customers are getting the same email? It's not, right? And then the 4th thing we heard is little automation. So the post-purchase experience can be very heavily manually driven. I see a lot of heads nodding for that one as well. And so if you think about, how do we really do this? What I'd love to do is spend about 10 minutes to give you guys the strategy. How many of you want the strategy? All right, so here we go. First and foremost, what it's gonna take is, how do you connect and integrate all of your data? I'll get out of the way for you. So if we think about all the different data systems that all of our customer data lives in, how do we connect things like our transportation management system to our order management system to our carrier data? How do we bring all this data together in order for us to really facilitate the post-purchase experience that our customers desire and expect, while also at the same time driving automation to where we can actually drive operational efficiencies into delivering these. Now, the key is once you bring all these data sources together, now you have to have a platform that can actually manage, understand all the data. And a couple different things here is it's not just about having all the data in the right place, but it's uncovering the different patterns that can essentially say, hey, based on Nick's behavior, here's the experience that you should deliver to him. Based off of, I think your name tag says Giselle. Close. She needs to have a different experience. And so that's essentially how a lot of these leading brands are delivering higher customer lifetime value. So ultimately, it's not just about how do you make sense of all that data, how do you drive real-time experiences, but it's also about driving a cross-functional strategy with your post-purchase experience. So a lot of times the PPX sits with logistics leaders. Most of you in this room are probably in charge of your post-purchase experience. And ultimately, the post-purchase experience strategy is a cross-functional strategy. And in order for you to take it from tactical to strategic, is you gotta get the different colleagues involved. So you have a customer experience leader here, we had logistics leaders, we had a contact center leader in the back. So ultimately, how do you make sense of all this data and in live time empower all the different teams within your organization to take action on that data? That's how you truly transform your post-purchase experience and ultimately drive the customer lifetime value flywheel. So you're also in luck, because here's why you're in luck. You're not sitting there through 55 different slides, but ultimately, one of our customers who was going to be on stage with us, she wasn't able to come in. So we have a shorter presentation, but what we'd like for you to do is come visit us in our booth. It's right outside the door here. We're giving away prizes. And what we'd love to do is just have an honest conversation with you about how you would say, where are you at in your maturity around just pulling all of your data together and routing and empowering to your teams. Deal? You want a question?
I do have a question, because you had a nice provocation at the beginning in terms of how much we returned.
Yes.
And you're going to be shocked, but I return almost nothing.
Really?
Yes. Well, I think it's driven by the fact that I order very little apparel online. But so my question for you is, how should retailers reward customers that just, because the descriptions these days are so good. I know exactly, the star ratings, there's a lot of stuff. I need it or I don't need it. So then how do we reward those customers that don't return stuff? They're super valuable.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I think it's not only, the question could be not only how do we reward those who don't return anything, but how can we even deflect returns as well? And so a lot of that, to your point, is the first question around how do we reward those who don't return? I want to say it's very, very simple, but it's not, because you have to have all your data together. But ultimately, what we've been able to do with our platform is once we have all that data together, now we can help you interact on a very individual level. So we can help you build and deliver experiences at the one-to-one level. So if it is your highest level loyalty customer like yourself, who's the most valuable customer who's not returning, you get a different experience. So different rewards, different experiences. Versus if it's me who's returning a lot, my experience might look a little bit different. I think the other piece that's really important too, when you think about the returns process, is we know that about 40% of our consumers actually just want to be able to do a seamless exchange. Meaning, I love the shoes, but I need a half size larger. So instead of having to return the shoes and then wait for my refund and then ordering them again, I can seamlessly just initiate the exchange. And then ultimately, what we also do see with customers is they just want that gift card. So just give me store credit, I'm gonna purchase with you again. So we actually call it kind of the return deflection. So how do we help you save the sale without having to go through and do all the monetary exchanges? But I think the key is you have to understand who your customers are with all of your data together, and then be able to design those one-to-one experiences. Good question. Anyone else? Very cool. Well, with that, give yourself a round of applause, because now you have a break and you don't, or you can go listen to the last 30 slides that they got. But other than that, we'll be over in our booth. I don't even remember what number we are, 22, I think. And would love just to have some general conversations with you. And we're giving away prizes as well. So come by and see the crew at parcelLab. Thank you.